They've been here since early. They've been waiting for you to get started. And then you're gonna go back to talk about what you're talking about.
Good morning, gentlemen and ladies. We'll get this meeting started. Go ahead and have a roll call vote. You want to do it? I'll do it. I'm here.
Not voting.
Yeah, roll call, sorry. I'm here, Miss Allen,
Here.
Mr. Kitson,
Here.
Ms. Shippert,
Yes.
Ms. White, absent, Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Alice and Dee are here, along with several board members and interested parties. Approval of minutes from the previous meeting will stand as read unless anybody has any corrections. Perfect. We'll dive right in if that's all right with you guys, and we'll go from there like we have the last couple of meetings. I'll take a motion. Yeah, they're approved. Yep, approved. Yeah. So we are going to start with, Dave is not in here, so we'll wait. You have some information from Farm Bureau on your desk in regards to what they've got, so we'll dive into that if you want to. You can have my copy. I can share with Tom. I'll get my copy. That is that one.
This one? Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, I made 10 copies, so I guess I hope oh, okay, I was gonna say, I hope I have enough. Got me to wait?
No, go ahead, rock and roll.
Okay, rocking and rolling. I brought a proposal. This is kind of recycling the proposal that we had cycled around the last time when we were discussing with some proposed amendment ideas on the solar fencing and screening sections. One of the concerns that we have is that based on the way that they're written, there could be scenarios where a project boundary and a property line boundary could be different. And one of the things that I guess we're proposing would be to try to align screening and fencing together so that if in those instances that potentially, like if there was a 300-acre parcel that was contracted with a company, but they didn't utilize the entire 300 acres, that the fencing and screening would be immediately adjacent to each other as to not kind of create the space in between, which could create, which could be just that, I mean, who knows what the different depths of a variance it could be, but it could help with eliminating some loss of farmland by putting those together. So that is one of the concerns. And then the other, sorry, I've got.
This is all for SES. These are for large projects,
For the
right?
solar, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is on the solar,
We're still not residential solar then.
not residential.
Okay, just
solar.
wanted to clarify that. That's what I
Correct,
thought.
yeah.
Okay.
And then on the second page, just interjecting the word at minimum equal to the cost design to try to not tie the hands of negotiations, so that if someone has the, ability to negotiate themselves a better deal than what is on the table, that we don't want to bind themselves to, to bind themselves to what's there. We want to allow them the ability to negotiate what they think is in their best interest.
I don't think we're at a point where we need to get through residential and pipeline. So
That's fine. I just wanted to get these in front of everybody. So if there were
Perfect.
questions, then I can work
we
to
can
get
circle
any
back
answers for you guys.
to SES projects. Does anybody have any questions in regards to? And I think this is the stuff that we've known all along that
Yep.
there is
This
stuff
was the
that,
original, short of the one that we had, that you guys solved the first time on the applicant definition. These are the other two original proposals that we had brought forward the last time. So
perfect.
bringing them back.
Always good to stay on top of it, especially with this group. Okay, you have information in regards to residential solar?
I've handed out to everyone on the committee, the Lee County's process for approving solar permits, a handout from DuPage County on how they handle residential solar, as well as an Illinois solar model ordinance, which applies to the various types of solar ordinances, but we might be able to get some useful information out of it pertaining to solar and community.
Okay. I think we're kind of at a point where from a residential solar, we have to really start talking some stuff. I think the setbacks are pretty well standard, right? They're set up by the county or we're set at different distances from roads and property lines. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel there personally. I think it's 15 feet off the property line, 65 feet off of a road, depending if it's township road, state road, or county road, but those can all be where they need to be.
We're gonna go with the regulations that we currently have for any structure being built in the residential zone.
Does anybody have any other discussion or opinion on that, or should it be greater? Or it can't be less, right?
Not a variance.
It's easy. It's what's already established, right? So why reinvent the wheel, right? Okay, leave it. Fencing, we've talked several times about. They've shown they were able to show the way that they were able to protect the electrical components on the backside. And personally, I don't believe a fencing needs to exist on a residential solar. I know we always, to your point, Marilyn, you live in a subdivision and.
It was more just a point of discussion, not that I was hung up on it, but
No, but as somebody who lives in a subdivision, like I don't have that luxury that after they showed you what they're capable of doing and what they have to do, I think we can write some of
I
that
don't
stuff
have any
in.
problem not getting fenced, but I wanted to discuss it, which is why I
Specifically brought it up. So would you be comfortable with having something written in that additional measures need to be put in to protect the electrical components?
as long as the electrical components are sealed or somehow protected, I don't see that we need to do anything to isolate panels. It's the means of transit.
And then
So how do we define that more in an ordinance?
how do we define the
What's protected and what's not, what's sufficient? I mean, do I need to reach out to Josh and get?
I would, I
more
think Josh should be able,
technical?
your technical guy who'd be able to give you some technical information on that.
Like you gotta be using this, or this,
Somehow
right?
it's gotta be
Right.
sealed systems.
Yeah,
There's no fence, yeah.
I mean, what he showed us,
He was talking about
But,
that. in the last-
yeah. maybe if we're clear, like it's gotta be one of these 3 systems or 3 processes, something.
He also talked about size being the size of the system itself and fencing. So do we want to set?
And that's where I was
Size.
going the next. So is the size of the system, and I envision this ordinance is also going to incorporate on-farm use for a grain bin, a shop, a facility of that matter. So it's gonna be larger than just if you put it on my house.
That'd be a different. That would be a different ordinance, correct?
I don't think it needs to be. Because it's still being used on site. That's the difference.
I think Josh said you have to size it
Correct.
according to what the needs are.
Correct.
not exceed.
Yes, so I really liked what, was it the McHenry County, is that, no, which county did you
It
have?
might have been Grundy.
Where it was 120% of what your needs
Right.
were, Kendall County.
Yeah.
I really like that
Kendall.
verbiage in there, knowing that you're always gonna have the potential, especially with green bins, a perfect example, guys are continuing to get bigger, that they have the ability to add more legs, more dryers,
As
more
they use
fans,
more.
more capacity to it without just boxing themselves in. So I thought 120% of what your needs were was a very perfect number
Same.
Okay, but still kind of leave it open-ended though, because,
of total size
right,
so now of acres or megawatts. How do you want to measure it?
that's what I don't know how to do that. If we're gonna allow them 100% and 20% of their needs, you think of a farm situation that's growing and they could expand versus a home.
I'm gonna look at Farm Bureau. Do you guys have any?
I know, I was just digging through my pile of notes to see if I could find, because I had in my notes at one point what what some of the size units are, so give me a moment to do
Okay.
some digging and I'll report that.
Megawatts per is how many megawatts are on an acre? Because I'm an acre guy, right? Like I can't picture a megawatt.
But
Well, it's 18, right, for, what did Josh say? Megawatts off.
That's 18 to 20.
Oh, that picture.
that's gonna be their usage. And are we talking about their maximum usage over a year? You know, when we're talking about a grade setup, that's gonna be very seasonal.
Absolutely, but it's 120% of yours. And that's where we have to probably define it, the 120% of your
Annual
Yeah.
usage.
of your annual, it can't be by month, to your point. So 120% of your annual needs. And if I shoot from the hip, is at 2 megawatts over there in Paw Paw, which I drove to it, looked at it, it's a beautiful project. It's large, but if you're using it for your own residential, that's gonna be a lot of energy. I would say this ordinance could cover up to 2 megawatts and less.
It's just 20 acres or less.
20 acres or less of self-use
solar,
solar. Or is that too big?
Because that's community.
That's
That
community,
was
correct.
Community. Oh, but we're trying to do residential and community on one ordinance, right?
Well, community it will go with our SES, with our
Oh,
main one. So
Okay.
this is just for residential use. And I lump grain bin setups with residential use because it's being used on site.
But if a community is 20 acres, it seems to me that 20 acres is huge
For residential.
for even grade setup.
That's my agreed, absolutely. So could you
So
do 1 megawatt?
Nelson, they're doing the 3-acre solar field for their project, and that is gonna be approximately 500 kilowatts. So, which is half a megawatt. So do we want to go down under megawatt?
Yeah, I'm getting there, working on it.
You're looking it up for me?
I've got it in my email on some of the stats on what some of the ones that are live and producing are, so let me just. I only have a couple of emails that I have to take through. I'm getting close.
But it's only being used for 3 months out of the year. So when it's annual, right, absolutely.
Okay, there's a commercial grain and fertilizer facility that has a 200 kilowatt system. So 200 kilowatts on that particular one. Growmark has a distribution center, not a grain facility, but a distribution center that they have a 500 kilowatt system. And then there's a couple sow farm units with 900 kilowatt system installations. There's some pork facilities using 2 megawatts. Most farm-sized solar installations are usually 200 kilowatts or less. From what we pulled offline.
Perfect. And that's coming from Farm Bureau exactly. So we could be we could take 200 kilowatts or we could take 500 kilowatts. And I think both of them would still,
The largest one listed on here was a pork packing plant with a 2 megawatt array.
and that's every single day, heated, moving, air conditioning. You're never gonna, we don't have that in the county, to the point that these ordinances can always change. That if somebody comes in that needs something bigger or different, we can always address it at that point, but
It seems that at a glance at looking at the stats that I have in front of me, that 500 kilowatts seems to take in probably most need.
at Nelson, correct. So area wise, I don't think that's too big.
Well, I hate to keep it bigger than that.
Yeah.
We're even a farm setup, you know. That's a good sized piece of property.
It is a good size.
But the size of all these are based on the energy they use on site.
Correct, yes,
Put
yeah.
up more than,
We're
we
saying
said-
anything above this now falls into our SES ordinance.
it's 120% of your usage and no bigger than 3 acres is kind of what this is saying, right?
That's
Like,
that's exactly what it
okay,
is.
that puts in my
Yep.
time. That makes sense.
So some industry that wanted something bigger could.
They're gonna have to go to an SES, they're gonna have to come back to this committee, and we're gonna have to go back through the process. But right now, to your point, that the ones that are putting it in are livestock facilities who have a huge amount of pull every single day, not a green setup that's for 3 months. So I'd be fine with 500 kilowatts if you guys are all okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Because they use it for-
3, no more than 3 acres.
Okay? No fencing requirements or no,
Sorry, I'm just rereading my email. So, I mean, I know we do have some hog facilities in the county. So size wise, I don't know how these facilities compare to the ones that have the units, but so there are some sow farm units that use that have 900 kilowatt solar installation systems that are currently on. And I do know that we have some livestock facilities in the county, so.
yeah, and I know where those, at least one is. It's in the middle of nowhere where it's very, very rural. I think it goes to the point that if they want to do it and they want to add on, that these are living ordinances that we can just come back and readdress some of these needs.
How big is their solar? This hog facility?
They don't have one currently.
Oh,
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying they don't have it and I don't know what their need would be, but this data
they're in
that
a-
I have says
they're
that
in a
there
part
are
of the
some that are
world.
using 900 kilowatts.
They're in a part of the world that they could put in 40 acres and you still wouldn't be able to see it. So
Nobody would know.
no, and which is a good thing. That's why the hog facility is there, right? So, exactly. Vegetative buffers, anything like that. Do we need to require them? My gut feeling says no.
It's on their own property for their own use.
Okay, just
I
some,
think HOAs would probably cover it for subdivision, so.
and
I mean, still have a residence, specifically in the big ones.
yep, you're still gonna have a residence. You're still gonna have to be 15 feet off of theirs.
You have one next to you, you zone, you'd have 2 properties that will need to have 120% of it.
No. He's saying that
No.
I put it on my property. He
And
was my
I
neighbor.
just built a new house next door and I don't want to look at solar panels. So shouldn't we have that vegetation requirement there? I mean,
I think it's size and
it's
scope.
Probably
of the
rare it
difference.
happens, but for the person it happens to.
Yeah, I think it's, my gut feeling tells me it's a size and scope difference, right? There's a difference between a 3 acres and 3,300 acres.
And I think, didn't Josh comment last week that you run into
Shadow.
shadow issues with residential screening requirements?
He also pointed out that it was cheaper to put it on the roof too, so.
I'm just saying, if I got 5 acres next door and I build a $250,000 home, I'm not gonna be happy. But yes, playing devil's advocate.
You're right, absolutely.
You know,
And a typical residence is gonna have 1, maybe 2 panels. So to me, it's just size and scope and to the fact that we,
Found 2 houses next door to the brain center. I think that should.
of course, yeah,
But if you're in the country, you gotta
It's
read some
expected.
of those things.
You do, but I think back in the eighties,
We use our mics, guys.
I think back in the eighties, when we built 2 or 3 houses and they decided to put the hog farmer out next door because now I don't like the smell of his hogs, so we can't feed him, you know, and I can see the same, the issue is on concerned those. Should we have some kind of vegetation there that doesn't allow you to come in and put it right beside me or decide, hey, I need a new drain system. I'm gonna build it over here on this side of my property, which just happens to be next to my new house. You know,
Yeah, and
I think we need to be conscious.
but to the point, to Marilyn's point, that those are landowner rights. If they want to put the grain setup right next to your house
And you build an egg one,
and you're building
Yes,
egg one
I
with
agree.
15-foot setback,
I'm talking about the solar.
right?
How is solar different than grain bins and buildings and stuff? That you know, I had one farmer says that the view across my land is so important, why aren't you paying me for it? What rights do you have of the
But-
neighbors?
But we have established through our ordinances that it apparently is important out in rural America to not fence and solar panel 1,000 acres around houses without some consideration for it. You know, today, again, I'm playing devil's advocate. If we want to make 1,000 acre solar farm, we've got all kinds of rules. But if you want to put this 3 acres of solar panels next door to my new house,
no rules.
we're saying there's no rules. So now I fight by myself, whereas in this big project, there's a dozen people fighting with the county for it. I just believe we ought to have some consideration for that person who may, rarely, but may be the person who has. I think we just ignore that, we've made a mistake, my opinion.
Well, and the difference is that we put it in the SES that the vegetative buffer can be negotiated out based on payments to
And I'm fine with that.
non-participating landowner. Now, and that's from an SES company.
Right.
Now, the problem is if I put it on my property and I have to pull out of my pocket to go put it on yours. And to me, that's the difference is we're fighting for Lee County residents. Not that the SES, we don't have an SES company in Lee County. They're not native here. They're coming here, but they're not.
Right.
So that's I think the threshold is we're looking at Lee County residents to Lee County residents. I don't know. And I get it. You're playing devil's advocate.
Well, I just have a concern for that individual Lee County resident as well as.
Mhm.
What's the vegetative, just planting like certain things around it, make sure that it looks pretty.
Yes.
Or something.
But how much do you put around it and then you decrease their ability to capture the sun? Yeah, I mean, which side of their property are you? There's a lot of things that play into that.
Well, there are, because if you say I'm not gonna do anything, then I may go out and plant all kinds of trees on my property, which do affect your 3 acres. Yeah,
So homeowner installation rights are protected under state statute. No deed restrictions, covenants, or similar binding agreements running to land shall prohibit or have the effect of prohibiting solar energy systems from being installed on a building erected on a lot or a parcel covered by the deed restrictions. So essentially, like we said, it would become a civil thing.
okay.
But we can't do anything to restrict a homeowner from installing solar under our statute. So I don't know if
So it's that-
requiring
That's fine, I'm just asking. the question.
landscaping would create hurdles for them. I mean, it's added expense. They can do it regardless. So
That's fine,
just
I'm
throwing
not
it
fighting
out
the
there.
battle, I'm just asking.
I know, I know. I'm
Sometimes it's hard to define that, but
Okay. Is there anything else that we think we need to add? Oh, insurance,
tight.
height, 20 feet. That's what, is that what we are for our SCS?
Yes.
Again, as much consistency as we can keep. I like the idea of consistency portion. 20 feet. Anybody got a problem with that? It's gotta be under 20 feet. And insurance. We have something in the SES for insurance and liability, but that's because of the size and scope, right?
Say residential homeowners.
Yeah, so I don't think we have to have any maintenance of general liability insurance in a residential.
I would think the homeowner or farmer is gonna have insurance anyway, and their agent is going to know that this has been installed, and if there's anything that is not covered in their policy, they'll probably take care of it.
That's okay. So
It's not our responsibility.
it's not our responsibility in this regard. So
Looking at the list of our current checklist, is there any of that that needs to go into the ordinance?
no. I do like on Kendall County's here, they do have a decommissioning plan that if the unit is not in effect for 180 days, they have to remove the solar energy system from the property.
How will we know if it's not operating?
I'm just saying that with building, if the house burns down and they decide to abandon it, I understand that if somebody's house burns down and they're gonna rebuild in the same spot, but at least have something in there that we have something along the lines of forcing them to decommission it rather than
They would be able to reapply.
they would still be able to reapply and there's some really good verbiage in here.
Not have derelict panels or
That's exactly it.
glass line all over.
Yeah. It really just gives us some teeth to force somebody into doing it. If, once again, somebody's house burns down, I'm not gonna be hey, you have it, you got it now 180 days to get this house built. That's not the purpose of it. It's you walk away from a building for some reason. Let's get rid of it. So
So if their house burns down in 180 days, they're planning on rebuilding, what, I mean, is there a mechanism in there?
yeah, so
Get like a variance,
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna take it down. to
Because
just-
I am gonna rebuild,
Right.
right, they take till next summer and
They have to
there's gotta be,
reapply.
they got to reapply. They don't have to take it down. There's some good.
you know, I don't think we need to make them jump through all the hoops again.
Something that's already built.
Yeah,
Yeah, those aren't to Dee's point, and she's got enough zoning things that she needs to chase around in the county. That she's not focused on probably that. If somebody, and really, Dee, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but your primary job right now with enforcing zoning stuff is when people come to you when they have a problem, not going out there and actively saying, hey, this is, you're not checking this box and this box and this box. We have just so many violations. So if me as a neighbor said, hey, they haven't done anything with this for 180 days, then they're gonna point it out to D, but I don't think we're actively out there policing some of the stuff. If you don't want 180 days, make it 365 days, make it 1 year. Like, it's just to prevent it from sitting there for 10 years in derelict. Correct.
Could we put something like unless zoning office notified of plant, like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of the house burning down, right? I
Right.
don't want to have to reapply for a permit when I already paid it once and had everything.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm just trying to build my house. I want to focus on that,
I
not getting
agree
another
totally. That's why I
permit.
said we don't wanna have to jump through all the hoops again,
Great.
just, you know, and maybe 365 is.
Maybe that is it.
365 is probably, because by the time you start construction, it's, Tom, how long does it take to build a house? I guess Town Square.
Today. because of
Depends on the
materials.
contractor.
But could you get a house built in a year?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my
Yeah.
point. Like,
Okay.
so you,
365 days.
365 days.
From the time it starts building.
Right, but I think a
But I-
decommissioning plan of 365 days.
But 365 days, we know if it's gonna be underway.
Right.
Yes.
It extends that out from 9 months, but it still keeps it within a year. So
Yeah.
365, I think, works for.
Okay.
ComEd or their insurance plan, if you're not using it for a year, then they'll reimburse you less for
Right.
future and all kinds of things.
Yep.
For the homeowner. We just don't want something abandoned.
And that's exactly what we're trying to, we don't want
No,
something
and I
abandoned.
agree on that, but I just,
You just thinking outside of the box, right? Like,
you
what's
know,
the
if
worst case
somebody's at a house
scenario?
where they've got enough other problems.
I was gonna say, that's. what I'm
Rather than
thinking,
us being
I've
like,
gotta
get rid
figure
of
out how to
this.
get my house built, let alone worrying about a permit for the solar panel I already did.
Do you have anything else as far as residential? Alice D, anybody, any part of the committee or any members in the audience? Think we're going the right direction, Keen? Are we going the right direction on this?
Sorry?
Never mind, just say yes.
Chris,
Go ahead,
I got-
Mike.
I got a question on your height restrictions there. Are you gonna, because this is residential you're talking about now,
Residential, yep.
20 feet. Are you gonna specify whether that's roof height, ground height?
This is
You
just
can't-
ground mounted. This has nothing, the roof mounted ones. They're on your roof. There's nothing. There's no. It's because this is a different structure that goes on the ground. Different footprint of the earth. So you have, does that give you all the information you need, Alice, to start putting together a?
Start.
Okay, so Alice will get that. I don't think we need a motion or anything. We'll get that working and go from there. So we'll have that hopefully to approve and discuss some more at the next meeting.
Lot coverage.
You're,
Checking the setbacks. Physically, checking the setback.
you guys, you guys physically don't check setbacks, do you? D? Depends. There you go. There's the answer. So,
Depends on.
depends on.
If D has time.
Right. So people could be subjected to verification of setbacks. So you could say-
If I was a neighbor to Tom's kids, and I want to make sure my setbacks are proper.
Be
Awesome.
the devil's advocate.
Okay, I think we're good there. I think we've got the brass tacks for that and we can get something put together and have it for the next meeting. Moving on to pipeline discussion. And Dave's in the back and would like to discuss, we need to discuss right-of-ways and road use agreements for pipeline projects. Dave, and I believe you've got some opinions on this or just want to,
I'll let you guys discuss what you need to discuss, and if I.
so, well, can we run through the right-of-way? Can they run through the right-of-way, in your opinion?
You get to make the call.
I'm asking you as our professional expert.
You have more experience with the windmills and all the problems, and Dave, we really respect your opinion because you've fought this out over years with the windmills.
Well, what I would say is typically, when you have, say, your typical cross-country pipelines, they don't run up and down right-of-ways. You know, they're on private property and they cross underneath roadways at 90-degree or close to 90-degree angles. They don't they don't inhabit the right of way. Typically, your right of way is inhabited by your utilities, your electric, your communication, your gas service lines and stuff like that. It's really more reserved for those sorts of functions and not necessarily an actual transmission line for gas or petroleum or anything. And I think you probably just need to think pretty long and hard before you say, yeah, go ahead, because that really opens it up to any pipeline to run up and down through the right of way. So there's a kind of a number of issues there to deal with. First off, I mean, it's difficult enough with all the utilities. If anybody's ever dug, you can't stick a shovel in the ground without hitting something. And now we have another pipeline in the right of way. When we need to maintain things, it's just another obstacle to work around. So, and these aren't necessarily, if we're talking about maybe more of a mainstream national company, they'll have representatives around, and anytime that we're near them, it's watch and protect. I mean, we do that routinely. If we're digging anywhere near a pipeline, typically 50 feet or closer, they have somebody there, watching and making sure that you're not going to get into their facilities. But if you're talking about another company that's not maybe a national company, I mean, who knows where those guys are? I mean, I just don't know. So I just think you need to proceed with caution, on that subject and kind of think around all those issues.
Road use agreements, when they're going underneath these roads, are there gonna be much damage to it? They're not having to dig up the whole road and having to replace it. They're gonna be able to bore under it.
Yeah, typically, we don't allow any open cuts on utilities. It's all borings. Okay, because you pay for that, for the rest of your life there. There's always settlement, no matter how hard you try. So those are always board situations, and everybody's used to that. When it comes to a road agreement, there are instances in the state, I think it's fairly typical on a major pipeline crossing, as it works through township and county jurisdictions, that there are actual road agreements in this case, in terms of county roads approved by the county board, that would be similar to a wind farm road agreement that you've all seen a whole bunch of times now. That kind of make sure that at least there's some security put up for damage to roads. We've worked with ComEd in the past when they've done transmission line overhauls. They've done several of those over the past number of years. And we do get a road agreement together with them. It's probably not quite as lengthy as a wind farm road agreement, but honestly, it really depends on their timing. Springtime of the year, you got substantial opportunity to damage the roads. In the middle of the summer or even in the middle of the winter, not so much. So somewhat depends on their timing as to how you structure that road agreement too. So
You got some basic verbiage that you can put into the ordinance, Alice? Pretty cut and paste type of.
Well, I guess I have more questions about how to. In my previous email, you brought up the perpendicular to right of ways that the piping needs to. So I guess that's the language that I would need is what language do we need in there to protect ourselves, I guess?
Will you be able to help if she can get something started? Would that work best that in you be able
if you
to?
get something started, I mean, in terms of roadways, if we're not anxious to see them run, parallel up the right of way, and we only want them to hit them at 90, then, that's a simple clause in the agreement that we can draft up. That's not a problem.
So do we need that in the ordinance or will that go in the road use?
I would put that in the ordinance. That way, when a pipeline comes in, they know they know that that's a local requirement, right off the bat. I would think that would be more helpful to them to know that if that's your desire here. So that would
I guess my question is, are we going to allow them in the right of way? I mean, Dave said usually pipelines are across private property. We've got utilities, et cetera, in the right of way. Is this gonna open up a whole new can of worms, putting this pipeline in the right of way?
Well, we have pipelines that cross under our roads now. You know, there's a number of those. Any of the cross-country pipelines, they're crossing roads now.
But not crossing, let's say they're running parallel to the highway in the right of way.
No, we don't have any of those situations. No, they're only hitting them at 90s or close to it, you know.
Okay,
And so you're saying do not make it so they can't run miles down the right away.
Yeah, if you open this up, I mean, you may be considering an instance where you've got a pipeline that's considered maybe a 4-inch line or something like that. And you say, well, what's the big deal? And maybe not. But, you know, a lot of these are 18s and 24s and so forth. And, I don't think you want that kind of pipe running down your parallel down your right of way.
Charlie, did you catch that? Or you got any other comments to that, Charlie, or?
I joined a little bit after you started the discussion. I make it a point to never disagree with Dave Anderson. He's a smart guy. He's got it figured out. So I'll abide by that.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you, Charlie.
Dave, are we right to ask you to help with this, or is that in the scope of your job, or are we impeaching or encroaching, I should say, on?
No, that's fine. No, that's
Okay.
good. You're all good.
Well, we appreciate your help. I just don't want to be overstepping where it should be. Okay, thank you.
No, that's perfectly germane to the job.
So I think a lot of the pipeline stuff is following what AMO requires, reiterating that crossing perpendicular to the roads, not running through right of ways. We're gonna have to have insurance in there, and a road use agreement. And do you have a decommissioning plan? I know we had talked about that. Were you guys able to come up with anything in regards to that?
This is Steve Hall. Can you hear me all right?
Yep,
Yes.
sure can.
Okay, thank you for inviting me here. Yeah, we're still getting some verbiage together, but essentially, again, going back to our pipeline, we're looking at a 3 or 4 inch line. This is not a major distribution line or anything like that we're looking to install. We're just trying to connect to the utility. And as far as decommissioning, we would be, again, we're putting some verbiage together, but essentially we would disconnect from the utility, purge the line, and cap both ends would be the typical decommissioning process that we would utilize.
So the pipe would end up staying in the ground, correct?
Correct.
Purged, yes. I look at you,
Yes.
Dave, like, is that how it's pretty standard?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see gas left in it.
Right, but is it okay to have the pipe fill the ground, or is it required to dig it up? Oh, okay. That's all that I needed to
It's
hear.
confusing, I'll be honest with you, at times when you're digging, but.
It's what it is. Okay.
So I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the response there.
Oh, so he said I was asking if there were utilities like this in the ground already, and he said, yes, they're currently unused, purged
Okay.
Utilities around. He said it's a challenge to dig, but it's what he has to deal with, so.
Okay.
So we can have some process in there of decommissioning as well.
Are we planning to run this through the farmer's fields as we first talked, or are we talking the right of ways, or what's the plan?
It's it's generally right of ways along the edges of properties, of private properties. Very seldom do we run through the land, but it's a negotiated agreement with the landowner as far as the course, but generally speaking, it's along the edge.
Okay, just for clarification, is that the farmer's property or is it government property? I mean, when you say right of way on their land.
It's the farmer's property.
Okay, thank you.
So it's inside, let's say,
Paralleling the
right Yes. away
in someone else's
Yes, correct.
in the right of way.
Correct. So you're gonna be on the other side of the power lines. You're gonna be towards the field side of the power lines, typically.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I would consider a setback on that as well, because if the roadway does need to be widened at some point, let's just say we do a reconstruct job or something like that on there, then we don't want to have to be on the hook as a local agency or a governmental body to have to move that line.
How far
So
you want?
where are we going? I mean, it just kind of all depends, on what road it is and that sort of thing. 50 feet would be nice.
We can do that.
50 feet from right of way line setback. This could be a little bit, I don't mean to swerve off topic either on, you're kind of going on where the location of the line, but may also consider some language in the ordinance regarding compliance with the Pipeline Safety Act. I mean, okay.
We have that, and we have AMA in there as well. Okay. KSC.
So based on that discussion, we would be required even on private landowners to have a 50-foot setback from what point?
Property line.
From the right of way.
Okay,
And that goes to protect our interests of the right of way and protect our interest of if we ever have to expand a road, whether it be a township road, a county road, and even a state, for the state matter too. We're protecting their assets in Lee County. There's a lot of safety and concerns that the farther away we can get from any of that, the better. Is there a depth, or is that it has to be, or is that going to be laid in by AMA?
Have a depth requirement.
That's an AMA.
Well, Pipeline Safety Act.
Okay, as long as it's somewhere that they have to follow, then perfect.
so it's also in AMA that they talk about pipeline depths. And one of the things our legal department looked at was that, again, this may change dramatically based on today's comments, that it was not intended for use and says so in the agreement for public right-of-ways. From our perspective, the technical and specifications of the agreement are fine. They're pretty standard with regard to pipeline runs. But our attorney said versus entering an AMA agreement, which would not really be appropriate based on the language in the agreement, where it's targeted at our agricultural land. Could we take the technical and specifications and incorporate them into the ordinance instead, so that everything is dealt with at the county level?
That's a Charlie question. Charlie, did you catch that?
I did, and I'm trying to understand it, but I guess what I would look at is I would still keep the AMA in there and have an alternative condition that would apply for what he's describing.
Did you hear him, Steve?
I did. I'm not quite following. What I can do is I can send you the language from our legal department, and Charlie can take a look at that, and then he can respond back to you guys. I think it'll make more sense.
That works for me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, well, and this isn't going in that part of the world, but yeah, to the point of, I never even took into consideration of widening roads, changing paths, any of that stuff. So I appreciate you being here today, Dave.
And if you're talking where we were discussing before, we're out on about 30, who knows what happens there? 30 over in Iowa is a 4-lane road.
Yep.
Well, and to Dave's point, you don't want to open up the can of worms, right?
Right.
By doing it now for this one, but then somebody's like, well, you did it here, so now I want the same thing.
Set
Right.
precedents.
but we're an ag zone. So I can legally, I gotta be 15 feet off of that fence line anyways.
Steve, can you hear her?
No, I can only hear the committee members.
Well, they don't have an agreement to go through that property's land. They're gonna have to go around the property's land and still be 15 feet away from it.
We don't know for sure where you're going. I mean, we've seen the map, but as far as homes and stuff, Dee's comment is that if we're 50 feet off the right of way and a house is 65 feet off the right of way, you'd be within 15 feet of the house. That's the discussion that just, so you're aware of conversation.
Yeah, no, and that's an issue. I mean, we have a third-party engineering group doing the pipeline location and stuff for us. And yeah, that certainly could be an issue. And the 50 feet might be a burden to the landowner as well, if we have to go into their property more than they would like us to. And that may prevent some landowners from wanting to allow the easement in the right of way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Were you in regards to like a non-participating landowner's house or a participating landowner's house?
Yeah.
Well, the non-participating, it would have to go on the outside of their property. They wouldn't give the right to go inside of their property, so it'd have to go around their property and be 15 foot off their fence line.
Being 15 feet from a house. So even
Well,
if
there's
they
gas
operate-
pipelines way closer than that. You have to remember that to Dave's point, there are gas pipelines that are for utility use running in the right of way today, correct?
Not of that size. The transport line to your home is not.
What's that? Yeah, they've got gas.
But they're not.
Well, let's
They're
let you
attached to
get
your
your information to Charlie. Let's get an official opinion back. We'll keep Dave in the loop for his comments, certainly.
Just one other point to consider, and we're talking on right away, not on right away. Even if it was to be within the right of way, if that right of way is a prescriptive easement right of way, in other words, not a fee simple transaction in which the county or the township local agency actually owns the right of way. And I will say in about 95% of the cases, it's a prescriptive easement. Any utility still does have to get the underlying landowner's permission, even though it is within the government body's right of way. So there still is that hurdle to overcome, even though it would be within right of way.
Thank you.
Alice, do you need anything more for this conversation? Or do you think you've got enough to start?
See where it takes.
Great. Anybody else have anything in regards to pipeline? Otherwise, we'll start working on it per an ordinance.
Just on setbacks, I watched DeKalb County as I worked over there years, and certain roads had to be made bigger and bigger, and setbacks are, can become an issue. If housing or, actually, the road's 15 foot from their house rather than 65, and so it's probably more of a major plan of the county of which roads are going to end up being major roads or.
Oh, and I think to Dave's point, Mr. Anderson's point, like he is 50 feet, the max that like you don't know when the next pipeline's gonna come in, right? And so you have to build this to be strict enough.
That's why I say it all depends. Are we writing an ordinance for one pipeline? Are we writing them for them all? Are we writing an ordinance for one particular locale? Are we writing an ordinance for the county as a whole? I mean,
County as a whole.
yeah. So lots of stuff to consider when it's county as a whole. If you want to narrow the scope down to write an ordinance for a project, I mean, then you can get into the maybe nuts and bolts of the project and how it really fits best for that particular project. But if we're going to write an overarching ordinance, you know, I think you really do need to consider many different factors. I mean, then next thing you know, Kinder Morgan's in here going, hey, we want to put a 36-inch main in 20 miles of your road. And we're going, wait a minute. And they're saying, well, it's right in your ordinance. We can do it. So I'm trying to throw wet blankets on stuff. It's just kind of, those are some of the things to keep in mind.
Was 50 foot off of the right of way enough? If Kinder
Again,
Morgan
that depends. I'd say it's wouldn't be really unusual. Let's say you're going to do a reconstruct job. What I mean by that, a reconstruct is you're going to buy a strip right away on the outside. You're going to push everything out. You're going to push everything out. You're going to improve your drainage and all your drainage structures and all that. That's why I'm saying maybe 50 feet. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to go, you know, buy 30-foot strips of right of way on each side of the road to make that happen, to get just get the roadway geometrics to work right the way you want it. So that gives you a 20-foot buffer. I mean, you don't want to be up scraping up against it next to this thing as you're putting in your back slopes. You know what I'm saying? You want some, you want to be away from that so that you know, your project isn't hampered.
So
and some roads are never going to have that happen. And some roads are. It's a little difficult to predict exactly which ones there are, although to Mr. Valley's point, we have a good idea on some of them.
So let's do it this way. Make it strict enough that they can ask for a variance when we know that it's gonna go on something else. Because we can always do that. We can always offer variances at the ZBA. So is 50-foot setback from the right of way, it doesn't across every single road in Lee County, is that enough? And I'm asking you as our professional.
It's enough. I would say if you're just going to expand out basically your ditches and build your road out and say, take a road from 20 foot to 22 foot or 24 foot or something like that, it's not enough if you're going to make a 2-lane highway into a 3-lane highway. Okay.
So how much do I need on that?
So, I mean, if we want to go most restrictive, you know, then we're going to want to bump it out. And then it's going to be based on the alignment of the road at the time. I mean, you may end up realigning it so that 50 foot out, you put maybe a little curve in there and now all of a sudden you get close. There's just so much to consider. So I don't want to nail it down and say, yeah, that'll do it every single time, because I don't think it will. But I think 50 foot is a pretty reasonable number to catch. Probably 95% of everything that's going to go on.
And if they need to do anything less,
then I would put in the ordinance that the relocation of the line is at the company's cost, not the county. I would put that in there. If you have a mind to, that would certainly keep project costs down if that were ever to happen.
Perfect.
So with regard to this 50-foot right of way, this is whenever we encounter a road or a county road intersection. Is that it, or is that on every piece of property?
Piece of property. Yeah, so you'd cross the road parallel and then you'd have to be 50 foot, you'd run,
Cross the road perpendicular.
excuse me, perpendicular, and then you would run, so when you're
Parallel to the road.
parallel to
50
the
foot.
road, 50 foot off of the, out of the county, off the county right away.
Yeah, so the verbiage is going to have to go something like, you know, the crossings are allowed at somewhere near 90 degrees, but anything running parallel is going to have this setback, and, you know, we settle on 50 feet, then call it 50 feet. But, you know, if they're going to cross perpendicular, you can't have a 50-foot setback in that condition because they got to go under it. So.
We'll get an ordinance put together, Steve, unless you have something else that you want to address. Get the information you have over to us so we can get it on to Charlie. And we'll continue to work on this ordinance to see what works for you guys to protect both your assets and ours. So.
Okay, sounds good.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to battery energy storage systems. Emily, you want to introduce yourself and give a little 411 of So Tom and I had the opportunity to meet with Emily and some people on her team the other day. And she's with the Nell, and they have battery backup, battery storage. And we found it very beneficial to work with industry in the solar project. We don't have to start from the beginning. We don't know what they have. So I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. That was definitely a surprise.
I know.
I'm definitely here as a resource for the committee to answer questions around battery storage. My name's Emily Skill. I work for Enel Green Power. Our company does have battery storage operating in other countries, and we're building our first facilities here in the United States as we speak down in Texas, which are going to be co-located with a couple solar projects and a wind project. So, the technology is new. We want to be here as a resource as you develop a battery storage ordinance. We're currently working with our team internally to identify some requirements that should be in the ordinance. And I've been working with Chris and Tom on, what those items should be. We don't have anything ready for you at this time, but we're absolutely here to work with you on this process and make sure this ordinance is something that is a benefit to Lee County and can also be seen as a model ordinance for this region of Illinois. So we're hoping in the next couple months, we'll have a model ordinance to provide to you all to review and to work with you to bring something positive forward for your community.
So Emily did say that we do have the 6-month moratorium. And just because of holidays, timing, so on and so forth, that the earliest we'll probably see something is probably January, is the reality of it. And we know we're gonna have to get through some other stuff there, but we don't need to be mindful that we're probably gonna have to extend this moratorium on battery backup storage, just because, well, if you wanted to be part of helping us write the ordinance, you should have been here. They're not looking at trying to put one in for maybe even 2 years in Lee County. So the other companies are not part of it. So if we have to extend it 3 months or 6 months to allow the companies in the industry that's willing to help us, I think that's very realistic. So any questions for Emily? Okay, awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
You've got wind energy conversion systems ordinance update.
Going back to the pipeline, biogas facility,
Yes.
we're gonna do an ordinance for that as well.
So in regards to what she's talking about is the conversion facility at the plant itself. And do we need an ordinance for that? And Charlie, I'm gonna look to you, like, do we need an ordinance for the actual facility that's converting the methane to, or cleaning it? Do we need a special ordinance for that?
Sorry, I was trying to find the mute. I think I need to know a little bit more about it. I couldn't really hear Alice. I'm not sure exactly what the question was when she brought it up, but it seems to me if you're going to have another facility or another portion of that energy producing process, you probably need to have something to regulate that, or to at least have that building permit portion.
Okay. When Steve messages you, reach out to him and ask him if they have something currently from other counties, because I know they're putting this in Vermilion County. It's, again, we can start somewhere. We don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. It seems pretty.
I've looked into Vermilion County and they did not have anything on their books for it. It is going to probably be the only one we have in Lee County, considering it takes methane from a landfill and we only have one landfill. I'm thinking it would be a special use in an industrial, because that is what it currently is.
Perfect.
And then just try to go from there.
Yeah, it's really just set forward. Like, there's a lot of safety standards that need to go into it that are going to be there. Setbacks, all that stuff is standard. It's just standard-ish.
Where do I find those standards?
Well, you can make them up. If you say it with confidence, people believe you.
There's a state revenue standard. it's an industry. You know, I mean, it's-
Very, very new
And that's where I,
technology and industry.
Okay.
There's only other one, they're building one in Vermillion County, but as far as I know, there's only one other one in the state of Illinois that's in East St. Louis. That's actually up and running. That would be similar to what we're looking at. So it's, and I've looked into East St. Louis to find if they had an ordinance and didn't find anything either. So we are, yeah, kind of starting from scratch here. So.
together an ordinance just to have an ordinance.
I mean, it's an industry. Isn't it?
Mhm.
I don't make light of it, but we brought another industry. Kind of, ordinance for industry.
And that's kind of where I was at, like, if, did we make if an ethanol plant wants to come into Lee County, is the ethanol plant Lee County? But if an ethanol plant wanted to come into Lee County, would we have to make an ordinance for said ethanol plant? Or does it just fall under the ordinance for industry?
Yeah, and whatever guidelines the state has in it. But when we talked to them
But I
before,
think on this, dealing with gas is a different issue than,
It's still gas.
yeah, but,
well,
and do we need to limit our search to what's going on in Illinois? Are there these things, either some in Iowa or Indiana or Wisconsin?
Yes.
Again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to find out who's already done it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I thought the ethanol plant in Rochelle was, south of Rochelle was in Lee County, Patriot there.
No.
No, it's in Ogle.
It's in Ogle. So if they're not putting ordinances in for ethanol plants, fuel to some level. I don't know, but
When we talked to them before, I asked a question about safety and stuff, and they said it was governed by any other safety in the state as far as like gas or those kind of products, so.
I think they were pretty regulated, didn't?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
What are
I
those
mean,
regulations?
but we need to know what the regulations.
Yeah, what
I
are
mean,
they?
you got to Fort Warner and all of a sudden they're using a different gas and they were used to, they put tanks in, they have all this gas there and I don't know if they were asking, but do that, I mean, it's part of industry, you know what I mean? It's. They don't build something that's gonna blow up and that's what we're looking at, safety issues. I don't know what an ordinance does. to protect us. I thought. Not against it, I'm just trying to understand why we want to do it, why we need to.
let's,
Well, to capture the permit fees, like Charlie said, so we should have something on the books. But
let's do some, and,
Construction.
Well-
Construction.
and,
Yeah.
Are you thinking like like Nelson, where it's how many kilowatts, how we charge that? Some way to
Correct.
regulate.
this will have a nameplate value. I'm looking at it like we do the other renewable energy producers,
Okay.
wind, solar. So I guess that's how I'm viewing it.
Okay.
so if that's the case, then I don't think we've got enough information to start.
No.
I think if you can find more information, then I think this committee is definitely open to it, because if there is a nameplate and we can make money off of that, let's do it, but,
Well,
I
I
think
think we really
it's-
try to protect the county and the residents from anything.
Well, and
wonky.
and that's the thing, I feel like it's an industrial use. I think making it a special use and industrial zone gives us some more protection. We can add conditions and whatnot. So I'll see what I can find to try to create an ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Wind energy conversion system ordinance update.
We have nothing pending currently. I know the Farm Bureau gave us some stuff recently on the wind, correct?
I don't have it with.
So that's about all we have. Are you wanting to move forward with making changes to that ordinance as well, or?
I don't think, we just changed the wind energy.
We adopted, we made all of the standards that we were making the wind companies adhere to. We did make those part of the ordinance. But there are changes that do need to be made.
There are changes, some specifically in the decommissioning costs, I know.
Commissioning, insurance,
I personally believe that we have I'd like to get the residential solar and the pipeline done before we dive into something new.
We don't need too many things out.
Unless we have to.
Unless we have to. And right now, I don't believe we have to. I think let's get those two done. We'll then identify wind energy. And once we get those two done, we'll identify wind energy. I'm going to touch on zoning permit fees. We've been asked to table that for a little while to discuss, but I think we do need to discuss zoning permit fees to feel if we are at a opportune standpoint from Lee County, make sure we're not leaving money on the table and still protecting the citizens. And then last but not least would be battery energy storage, especially with Annelle and Emily in the back there willing to help us, just asking for a little bit more time. We can, so that would kind of be my vision of sequence of events here moving forward, if that works for everybody.
I'm fine with that, on the battery, we've got storage system, we've got the moratorium. We might want to look at extending that moratorium so somebody doesn't sneak in while we're thinking about this. Get our ducks in a row and then say, yeah, come on.
Yep, and that's kind of where I'm at as well. Like I said, if you wanted to be part of it and get it moved along faster, you could have been sitting in these meetings. And so that's why I appreciate Emily and Annelle being here. And they're saying that they're not in a time crunch. So that's how that works.
Before you move off of wind energy, people have presented to us Thursday night, or board meeting.
RWE.
RWE.
RWE, another acronym. Okay.
Yep.
Are they close to wanting to do something? Or they just-
No, they're on about the same time schedule as,
So I read their brochure and stuff, and it just.
Yes,
kind of
so
hanging
they're,
whether they were assuming by-
so,
years out from petitioning yet.
Okay.
and they're even behind Annelle when it comes to being on the queue. So it will probably, more than likely, how it's all sitting will be after them. You guys believe you're a couple years out anyways, at least a year and a half. So we do have some time to get some stuff done there.
We don't have any other big petitioners, right? Right now that we've,
No, we're in the middle of a hearing on South Dixon Solar, and then that's it for a while, I believe.
That we know.
right.
You're supposed to be the ladies in the know.
I just don't want somebody to come in and apply when we know we have things to address, right?
And
Because
That's kind of why I
then
said
we
even on the
get in-
battery, let's.
And
Extend the
to this
moratorium
other
on it, think about
point, can this committee put together, do we want to do a moratorium after South Dixon's done on a wind and solar moratorium? To get our ducks in a row, so we don't have, to your point, somebody coming in and trying to sneak something in on us.
While we're in the process.
While we're in the process of trying to, and would that be the purview of this committee to make that recommendation to?
Yes.
So Charlie, she was talking about community solar and that there's at least two that look like they're coming in, so. Maybe that's something we discuss at the next meeting, because by that point, South Dixon would hopefully be done. At least we'll see where they lay. But we can put that on the agenda for potential moratorium discussions, just to make sure we have everything done and right, to Marilyn's point. So I'm gonna say that you've got a lot of work to do, Alice.
Yes, can we have more than?
month?
Yeah,
Would you like, I was thinking the first week of December.
thinking 3 to 4 weeks, so
So
for you guys.
December 2nd,
This room is open.
Works for me.
I'll be by Zoom, but
If you have time.
We'll see.
so
Okay, well, I mean-
let's set it for December
No point
2nd,
rushing you, but it's-
huh? Thursday? Yep, 9 o'clock in the morning, we'll set it. If you don't have the ordinances done, we'll just cancel the meeting. Or postpone the meeting.
Hopefully we'll have at least one of them prepared for discussion at that time, so.
9 AM, you said?
That work for you guys?
Yeah.
I think we're finally getting some stuff done.
Yeah.
Any other discussion from the crowd? Anybody got anything back there? Going once, going twice? Sold? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
In a second? Huh? I said we are going to postpone, we're gonna postpone
Sorry.
that.
That's when you
there's
went
some
down
stuff that-
to a lot.
Oh, is that what it, okay, yeah.
In a second. Ms. Allen, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?